Obviously doing this at full speed is incredibly challenging, and that's not how we actually ingrain feels into our unconscious competence for our golf swing. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Kerrod here today on the range at Bletchingley Golf Club, standing next to Oli Tucker. Oli, thanks for coming along, my man.
No problem, pleasure.
And we're going to be running through some great exercises and drills to improve the quality of your backswing. The golf swing, it tends to have a domino effect from how you set up to the backswing to the impact, and we're going to be focusing on some key elements here that could really upgrade the quality of your ball striking. Let's get in. Okay, so with this specific swing example that we're looking at here, we got this junior, very talented, off a low handicap, and then we got the professional model over here on the right hand side. But he does something very specific in his swing that we see a lot of recreational golfers fall in the habit of, be that it's a misconception of how they move, right? Or essentially they've just always done this the whole life, but there's a certain principle in golf swing that we call low point, right? And low point is essentially where the bottom of the swing arc occurs. And what this player on the left-hand side does, as we're about to demonstrate, right? And we'll get you to talk us through the movement patterns that he actually makes. So we're just gonna draw a little circle around his head here. And we'll do the same with the professional model over here on the right. So what I want you to do is kind of talk me through his movement pattern from the address here. And then as he makes his way to the top of the swing, we're gonna talk about really what his body and his head does. So talk me through it.
So yeah, like you say, good player, very talented, but from the sort of initial movement in the backswing, you see heads outside the circle, maintaining that flexion in the swing, which is that sort of lean away from the target.
Yeah, so you can see he's kind of, his head has definitely moved out, so away from the target, and down a fair bit, hasn't it? And not only that, is when he's gone, and the term flexion, right, just means that his upper body has stayed bent down for too long, hasn't it?
Correct.
Now, generally what we see with the professional golfer over here on the right-hand side, just as a model, is you'll notice to the top, the head stayed within the boundaries. Now, this here is an effect of moving the body correctly and in sequence, right? And so what that means is that the spine, the golf swing is not as simple as just turning off the golf ball, is it? Right?
No.
There's certain movements in how it extends or stays down as such, so the up and down motion of the golf swing, which not only helps us with the appearance of staying centered, but also creating more distance and power, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So this player here, he was struggling with big pulls.
Hooks.
Big hooks. Okay, so he was struggling with big hooks, and his big frustrations, or his frustrations, where were they really coming from outside of the hooks? Was it that he just couldn't get his ball started on his intended line, or was it no matter what, it was just hooking?
It was the amount of shape, really. So he's good enough and talented enough player to start it right, but bring it back the right amount from there was tough. It would generally have too much shape.
Yeah. And was this with every club? Irons?
More so with the driver, as you can imagine, particularly something slightly out the toe side of centre, so it would really go sort of right to left.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of players make this move, right? So their head moves out and away. Now, within reason, there is an amount you can do this.
Yes, sir.
But for this player specifically, based on the fact that he was hooking it a lot, you identified after you asked him a series of questions, you've been working with this player for a while, right? You saw that with this movement pattern that he was making at the moment, the number one thing that was going to rectify his current issue at this point in time was the fact that we just needed to keep him a little bit more centered to the top.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Okay, so what sort of drill or exercise did you work on with this player to get into a position where he wasn't shifting off the golf ball so much with his upper body?
So initially, more of an understanding of how he was trying to produce a slightly straighter or less to the right path. So club path, when we had him on TrackMan, there was sort of 8, sometimes 9 out to the right, which is probably top end of the limit for me and how much shape you can produce from there.
Yeah.
So to understand what was creating that, it was as he turned off the ball, the amount of turn, great, and you normally see maybe higher handicap players, this hip might go with it as well.
Exactly.
But being quite a useful player, he kept lower body pretty central, but wasn't really stacked with his upper body, so we tend to tilt away from the golf ball.
And what we'll do, just for this camera here, so if you set up to the ball for me, if I was to simply just dangle a club from Oli's head here down within reason, let's say that's the center line, what you'll notice is that, show us what an amateur golfer would generally do if they swayed off the ball. So it'd be lower and upper body off the ball. They would move their whole mass, right?
Yeah.
But restart again for me. This player himself was just doing one.
So hip went more towards the midline of his body, which I quite like to see, and upper body staying over his right foot.
Yeah, perfect. So when you set up to that golf ball there's two main centers to the body, right? You've got the upper center, which is, let's say, the shirt buttons, and the lower body, which is the belt buckle. And this player was keeping or pivoting his lower body really well, but his upper body was shifting off a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, correct. And he also had that sort of misconception with the driver as well, where he thought that to create some sort of angle of attack, that you have to really keep this upper body back here a lot more, which you don't often see in tour players.
Yeah, correct. So you gave him the understanding, you worked through, the kid bought into it, then what happened from there?
So in terms of drills, and you might see him from the face-on view there, that because he's been playing a long time, he's a good player, he knew that to hit less of a hook, he's trying to get the club path a little bit more left himself. So even with this rotation here, he was trying to get the arms up to sort of counteract the amount of club path or movement he was getting to the right with the club.
Now, when the head moves off, so set up to the ball and make his movement pattern that perfect. Now, when your upper body is further behind the ball, what happens is this golf club itself, it has more time to close, doesn't it, in space,
Correct, yeah.
right? So the face was coming through and was closing. Now, a lot of players would have the misconception, I need to change my grip or something like that. But for this player, it was actually just his movement pattern.
Yeah, definitely. So where he was trying to create a straighter path by lifting the arms up here, we did it more with the type of rotation and adding some extension in that turn.
Yeah, okay. So extension, talk us through that.
So rather than just maintaining, so having this tilt in the setup, rather than sort of maintaining that all the way through, we're trying to increase the extension in his back, almost to the point where he's feeling as though his head's, or certainly eyes, are looking towards more the front of the golf ball.
Great. So even a slight feeling or awareness like you've just given us there, or feeling like his eyes were looking a bit further forward, well, it's going to completely change the orientation of his body, right?
Yeah,
because we see there's a lot of drills and exercises, for example, like if you set up to the ball for me, where you'll see a lot of the time players can just do this, right? You put the golf club up against and swing to the top. And for this player, that kind of solves everything. The problem is a lot of players don't learn in such a way where they're able to take that to the golf course. They need a certain feel throughout their swing, which is not necessarily always relying on drills and training aids with drills, right? So for example, if I've got an object in the way, it's like, okay, it goes from feeling a move throughout the swing which you can produce a result to almost a gamification of don't hit the noodle.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and that's definitely something we tried with him as well. This player tends to be a bit more visual, so as well as the thought of even setting the ball up so the logo's more towards the front and, can you peek at the logo type of thing. When we did use a stick, it was more over the golf ball here. And then from the view of the player's perspective here, any movement off this way, I'm looking at the ball this side of the stick. Compared to if I try and turn and stay slightly more central with the upper body or a bit more stacked, having some extension in the back here, the stick would be over the golf ball.
Yeah. Okay, great. So what I'll get you to do, just stand there for me. And just to really kind of isolate these movement patterns, what we're going to do is I'm going to put this golf club across my chest and we're going to talk about the effect of extension and why that helps get the low point of the bottom of the swing forward, which is going to help us with compression. It's going to stabilize that club face so it's not closing as much, but also generate more power. And this kid picked up a few extra yards from doing this exercise as well, right? So in the golf swing, if I put this golf club across my shoulders like this, and the spine works in three different ways. It turns, right? It tilts, and it extends. Now, this kid, as he was moving off, he had a lot of the turn, a little bit of the tilt, but he didn't actually have any of the extension. Now, one of the best analogies I like to use for creating power in the golf swing, and this is for a player like this, is that if you were going to chop wood, right, you could stand there with an axe and you could just use your arms like this, which essentially is kind of what this kid was doing. But if you want to generate a lot of force and chop that wood powerfully, what you do is you actually extend your spine. And when you extend your spine, it lengthens it. You actually shift your pressure in your feet to allow you to then put more pressure down. And we know someone like a Rory McIlroy, in his golf swing, actually extends really well to the top, has this big dip, and that allows explosive energy in the way through, correct?
Definitely. And I like the example, you see a lot of people using that wood chopping for how they deliver the club, but as a way of producing more power as well. That's a really good example.
Yeah, so if I was this player and I was setting up, and the lower center of the body was in a pretty reasonable position. He was shifting his pressure pretty well. It was the upper body's moving off, right? So you gave him the awareness that he needed some more extension. Now straight away we can see that the head is going to stay a lot more centered to the top. Now you originally put the stick in the alignment drill there. Was there a reason that you moved on from that and you got it to his eyes? You said he was a little bit more visual.
Yeah, I'd say I know the player for quite a long time, so we would place it more sort of over the golf ball here. And then as a different type of visual, which you can still hit shots from. From your sort of first person's perspective there, you can probably see if you go into that, maintaining your flexion on the backswing, you'll see the golf ball this side of the stick.
That's incredible, yeah.
And then extend, and you can keep it a bit more under the stick.
I'm going to steal this one. That's great. So
I've stole it from somewhere else. So
yeah, all the best information is just reused, right? So when I'm setting up to it here, if I'm in a position where my upper body is moving off, and you'll be able to see this perfectly from this face-on view, is that my eyesight, especially if you're going to narrow your focus, right, and you're not using your peripherals, now I'm shifting off, I can see too much of the ball on the right-hand side.
Yep.
So this is a fantastic drive. I've seen this for ages being used. So when you're swinging to the top, now I'm actually just trying to, what am I trying to see? More of the ball on the left-hand side as an exaggeration?
As an exaggeration, definitely. I think the only time is, and I see it less where players overdo something.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought he'd go this way too much. But if he does see it on the left-hand side of the stick, that's great. If it maintains being under the stick, then that's obviously a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, perfect. And obviously doing this at full speed is incredibly challenging, and that's not how we actually ingrain feels into our unconscious competence for our golf swing. You started off slow with this player doing some dry drills without golf balls?
Yeah, I mean, I always compare learning a new skill in golf to like a language.
Yeah.
So I learn, I can get by in Croatian. You're off to Croatia soon.
Yeah.
I'll give you some tips. But
Listen after this.
yeah, definitely. So I would learn a word at a time, like ball, stick, club.
Yeah.
And you can do it piece by piece. So it could be, this could be the first word, and then anything on the downswing could be the second word. So when you know the words, you can put them together, but you're still not fluent.
Yeah.
So you would do it slowly. So
Yeah,
I'm very not Croatian when I speak. I can get by, I'm just not fluent. But I can put the words together in a way they might understand, but it is very slow.
Yeah, of course.
And when I become more confident with the move and I've got more feel for the words I'm using, then it becomes fluent like your golf swing.
But the key there is it happens unconsciously. Right?
Yes.
So you start off in your training when you're learning a new language, word by word by word, then all of a sudden, I don't know, a year down the track, you're having a conversation, and all of a sudden you go, wow, that actually came out really well. You didn't consciously try and speed it up.
Right? No, correct.
So when players are doing these sort of moves, right, and I can see when I set up here, that ball's pretty much, do you get the ball starting directly?
Depends on ball position the club you're using, but as long as you don't see more of the ball or more of the ball under the stick to the right hand side, correct.
Okay, so I would say that even just having a couple of practice swings where I can see the golf ball, and I love that I can put the golf ball a little bit further away and have a practice swing and it's still got the same reference point. Almost pretending there's like a ghost ball there, very small, slow swings, trying to just consciously feel like I can see more of the left hand side of the ball and then follow through. And then let's see if I can hit that. And have a look at my head here for me, Oli. Does it stay nice and centered as I do so?
Yeah, I think you'd be pleased with that if you were trying to change the and add the extension, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So excellent drill there to help a player who stays in flexion or when their upper body shifts off the golf ball too much. The lower body was in a good position. This is more of a, I would say there's a good player's problem. Like we do see amateurs do this a lot. Yeah, and this guy was nearly off scratch, he said. Yeah,
he's 2 handicap. And even there you might see, we were talking about low point earlier, where if you do get your sort of mass over your right foot too much, it tends to be for amateurs who maybe can't get back to the ball. Exactly, back there. He's a good enough player to still get a very good strike on the golf ball. He was just a bit frustrated with the amount of shape he was getting.
Yeah, and then as soon as you did this drill starting off slowly, right, even we saw there when I was doing that little move, you could see the ball had a little bit of a fade.
Yeah.
And for a player that's hooking the golf ball so much, he saw a very similar thing. He built up some confidence, and then before you know it, in a couple of weeks, he's making more of a centered pivot.
Yeah, exactly. And then the path was chopped in half quite quickly from 8s and 9s to 4s and 5s. So.
Right, great coaching. Good job.
Thank you.